Morning. Morning. Welcome to Rooftop. My name is Matt, lead pastor at Rooftop. Very glad to welcome you here. That scene from the movie Chariots of Fire, it actually took place. I saw it when I was a kid. I've never forgotten the scene since I saw that movie when I was a kid. But while racing in an Olympic qualifying match in 1923, Eric Liddell, otherwise known as the Flying Scotsman, he got tangled up with runner J.J. Gillies on the first turn in the quarter mile. Liddell tripped and fell off the track. By the time he had gotten back to his feet, the other runners were 20 yards ahead. Without hesitating, though, Eric jumped back on the track, began the chase. He caught Gillies with a few strides to go before the finish line, and as he passed by, breaking the tape, Liddell collapsed to the ground. Veteran athletes, veteran track stars who were there in attendance at the event said it was the greatest track performance they had ever seen in their lives. The Scotsman, which is a local paper, went on record stating that the circumstances in which Liddell won the event make it a performance bordering on the miraculous. Because of his victory, Liddell qualified for His Royal Majesty's track team and won gold at the Paris Olympics in 1924 in the 400 meters. And the Olympics are always filled with brave, courageous performances in which athletes set aside their fears, defy the odds, and get the gold. Imagine the courage it took for Gabby Douglas. Any women's gymnastics fans here this morning? Imagine the courage it took for Gabby Douglas to face endless media attention, the best competition in the world, the most intense pressure you can feel to become the first African American to win the Olympic women's all-around gymnastics competition in history. Or imagine the courage it takes for South Korean Im Dong-hyun to compete at the Olympics. He's an archer, which isn't that special, but he also happens to be legally blind, which is kind of special for being an archer. He can only see 10% out of his left eye and 20% out of his right eye. Dong-hyun wears no corrective eyeglasses. He says he just shoots at the middle of the dark blur. He's won several team gold medals, is also a world record holder. Imagine the courage it takes to shoot at a target you can't see. Imagine the courage it takes to say, I want to learn archery, when everybody else tells you that's impossible. You have to see to learn archery. Or take the courage of Gwar Mariel, and I'm not really sure I pronounced that right. He's a marathon runner. He's from South Sudan, which broke away from Sudan recently, but hasn't been a country long enough to actually have a team. So Mariel lived in Sudan much of his life. He learned to run by sprinting away from enslavement camps and hiding in caves. Eventually he was caught, kidnapped, forced to work, was beaten and tortured. The Sudanese killed 24 members of his family. He escaped to the United States. He fell in love with distance running. He was asked by the government of Sudan, the audacity of this, he was asked by the government of Sudan, his former oppressive country, to run the marathon representing Sudan, his country of origin. But he courageously refused. He turned down the Olympics as opposed to run for a brutal regime that had murdered his family members. So upon hearing about him, the IOC offered to let Mariel run as an independent athlete. So he will be running in the marathon as an athlete without a country, drawing attention to the brutality of the Sudanese government's war on their southern neighbor. Now I know the Olympics can be schmaltzy and sappy and saccharine with cheesy television announcers, Tim Daggett, Al Troutwig, whatever their names are. They wring every tear they can from every viewer's heart. Gets kind of ridiculous sometimes. But behind the sappiness and the media circus, these athletes are actual people. Some of them have gone through hell to get there, and their courage should inspire us. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning, courage. Last week, Jeremy kicked off a new series here at Rooftop called Olympic Faith. I don't know if anybody ever told you, but the Olympics are going on right now. It happens every 4 years. This year it's happening in London. We'll find out what happens. NBC will find out what happens afterwards. They'll tell us. So we thought we'd take the opportunity the Olympics presents, and talk about the Christian faith in Olympic terms. It's not really that difficult to do, given that the authors of the Bible were frequently using athletic metaphors to discuss what it means to follow Jesus. In fact, maybe you knew this, but the ancient Greek games were actually going on every 4 years while the New Testament was being written. So the Apostle Paul is constantly referring to the Olympics as they're going on. Every 4 years, in the first century even, Olympic truce was called so that members of the Greco-Roman cities and states could travel to Olympia to compete. And the Apostle Paul, the author of much of the New Testament, frequently used Olympian language to connect with Olympic-minded audiences, like we're doing, and inspire them to faith. In Paul's mind, sports shouldn't be about sports. Sports should inspire us to faith. It's one of the reasons I love to exercise, because I learn a lot about following Jesus. When I have to get up early, go exercise, discipline myself to pursue a goal. I know it's not about my ticker. It's about what God is inspiring within me. Interestingly, the ancient Greek games were canceled in 394 AD. Do you know who canceled them? Christians who had taken over the Roman government. They thought they were too pagan. Now, yes, the Olympic Games were being held in honor of Zeus, so I can understand that. But that doesn't mean that sports doesn't have a lot to teach us about faith, and that doesn't mean that sports doesn't have a lot to teach us about training and perseverance and teamwork, and that doesn't mean that sports doesn't have a lot to teach us about courage. So I'm going to go ahead and define courage this morning as the attitude or spirit within human beings that motivates them to face extreme difficulties and dangers in spite of their fears. That's what courage is. It's the attitude or the spirit within human beings that motivates them to face extreme difficulties or dangers in spite of their fears. Courage is what allows people to do what they are afraid of doing because they might fail, get hurt, or be humiliated. The word courage comes from an old French word, coeur. Any French students here know what coeur means? Heart. Any residents of Crèvecoeur? You should know that. No residents of Crèvecoeur? I grew up in Crèvecoeur. Go Crèvecoeur. Yeah, my mother is from Crèvecoeur also. Crèvecoeur is the city of the broken heart. That's where that Indian princess jumped from the cliff into Crèvecoeur Lake and broke her heart because the pioneer French dude didn't love her. Anyway, irrelevant. So courage, long ago people thought courage comes from your heart. That's where it came from. To find your courage, you got to dig down deep and find it there. The Olympics have always been demonstrations of courage, whether it's coming up an opponent in the ring, twice your size, having to perform with the world watching, or risking life and limb on the 10-meter platform in the diving competition. All those take incredible amounts of courage, even though it looks so easy on television. Take those divers jumping from 10 meters, or 30 feet-ish, while twisting and turning and pointing their toes with the water quickly approaching their protectionless bodies, their heads passing inches away from the platform, or in the case of Greg Louganis, not passing inches away from the platform, but actually slamming into the platform. When did that happen? 88? Anybody remember his head hitting the platform? Ugh. Talk about needing courage. I was actually on the diving team in junior high. That's pretty good. I had this fantastic front forward flip in a tuck position. It's just like one time through. Then one day in practice, I was doing a backflip, and I landed with my face on the board. So picture this. Okay, there's my face, board. Woo! That was the end of my diving career. This is the best the facial surgeons could do. I actually think about that moment every time I'm on a diving board. Just last week, for example, I was vacationing with my family at the Ozarks. We saw some people cliff jumping from 30 feet, and somebody said, "That looks like fun, we should do that." Nobody had the courage to say, "No, that's actually really stupid." So next thing you know, all the uncles, cousins, and kids were all scaling a steep hill to get up to a cliff, jump into dark water that we thought was probably maybe deep enough. It looks easy from the boat. But then you're standing there with nothing but space beneath you, and you're not quite as courageous as you thought you would be. Here's a picture of my son taking the plunge. It looks, I don't know if you can tell this, it looks like I'm actually pushing him off the cliff. I'm not. He went of his own free will. My brother Greg, he actually jumped too. He was up there. Took a few minutes to get composed, surprisingly far down. Took a few minutes to get composed, and once he jumped, he screamed like a baby twice. Screamed once, "Ah!" and there was still 20 feet to go. So there he is, over there. So I screamed again. You want to reenact the double scream? Okay. Sports takes courage. The Special Olympics actually has a motto. Special Olympic motto is, let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave. Let me be brave in the attempt. But it's not just sports that takes bravery. It takes courage just to be alive. From our earliest days on planet Earth, our courage gets tested. My little nephew, Sam, is learning to walk. And he freezes in a standing position and starts to cry. He's afraid of stepping because he might fall on the carpet. He's afraid of staying there because he might lose his balance. He usually just ends up falling on his big baby bottom with the soft diaper to cushion the landing. Doesn't have the courage to do anything. He'll get it. My 4-year-old daughter, Miranda, is afraid of combs because they will hurt when they pull out your tangles. For a 4-year-old, this is a big, painful deal. So every time I comb her hair in the morning, it's like an exercise in inspiration. You can do it. We can do it together. The Lord will be with us. What doesn't kill you will only make you stronger. It might not be the prettiest hairstyle this morning, but it will certainly be the bravest. Just being a child requires great courage, and then we become adults. New jobs, new careers, medical challenges, bills, parenting children, asking people out on dates, coping with loss, making hard decisions. We all face situations too big for us that we're not sure we can handle. And although we're tempted to stay out of the game, stay out of the race, stay in the boat, fall to the carpet with our big soft diaper, we have to dig deep into our core, and find the courage. It takes courage to be a child, it takes courage to be an adult, and it really takes courage to be a Christian. It takes courage to follow Jesus. Anyone who thinks following Jesus doesn't involve bravery in the attempt does not know much about Christianity. In the Old Testament, the command, be strong and courageous, is one of the most common refrains in the Pentateuch. Be strong and courageous occurs 12 times at least. The command is there because God knew we were going to face situations we were going to have to dig deep. Jesus challenges his disciples in moments of uncertainty. Take courage. Paul challenges his traveling companions to keep up your courage. Writes to the Corinthians, be men of courage, be strong. The author of Hebrews promises us eternal life if we stay brave. We are Christ's hope if we hold on to our courage. For some of us, faith doesn't seem that courageous. I mean, what does it involve? Going to church, seeing people you like, throwing a few bucks in the offering plate, praying we're in trouble. Faith doesn't always seem that courageous. It's sort of something you do on Sundays. But that's because we don't really know what it means to follow Christ. When we become followers of Christ, we get signed up for some of the biggest, most daunting challenges you can imagine, requiring unbelievable amounts of courage. In fact, when I became a Christian, I found that the challenges get bigger and huger, the cliffs get taller, the opponents more mighty. Instead of having to walk on carpet, now all of a sudden you got to walk on water. We'll call these faith challenges. Things that Christians get signed up for, whether or not we want it. Challenges like the holiness challenge. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Be perfect as your Father in heaven. As aim for moral perfection in life. Nothing less. That's quite a challenge. Be perfect. We all got signed up for that. Or the generosity challenge. Sell your possessions, give to the poor, then come follow me. Talk about a challenge requiring faith and courage. Give up everything you have. Trust God to take care of you. There's a reason none of us have actually done that, even though Jesus tells us to, because we don't have the courage. Or there's the love challenge. Love your enemies, pray for those that persecute you. Love, embrace, hug, kiss, pray for your enemies instead of ignoring them or beating them up. Talking about something that requires some courage. Or there's the prayer challenge. Pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances. I have problem praying for 3 minutes in a row. Jesus wants us to pray all the time. Learning to do that will require courage to believe it's even possible. Or try the church challenge. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. I know it takes courage sometimes to even show up to church on one Sunday morning. Imagine the challenge here to show up every Sunday morning for the duration of your lives. Or there's the evangelism challenge. Be wise in the way you act toward outsiders, making the most of every opportunity. Talking with Jesus, I've found to be the most difficult, hardest, most courageous thing I do, risking my reputation, risking the awkwardness, risking the reputation, my reputation. The reason we don't do it that often is because we don't have the courage. Or there's the service challenge. Use whatever gifts you've been given to serve others. These are all events that you and I got signed up for when we got baptized into the faith, whether or not we wanted to. We'll call them the Faith Heptathlon. I think I named 7. Faith Heptathlon. We're all Christian heptathletes. There's a heptathlon at the Olympics, right? I think it was yesterday. Anybody watch it? You know who won? This is the Olympic. Jessica Ennis. Oh, are you excited about our Jess? That's right. She belongs to the UK and all of us. Now, to be clear, Christianity is not a contest. We're not competing with anybody. If it is a contest, it's already a race. Jesus has won. He gave us the victory. Nothing else needs to be done. But that doesn't mean that God doesn't sign us up for some huge, daunting challenges that require incredible amounts of courage. That's why He gives us His Spirit, His strength, because He knows we're going to need it. When God directs the Israelites to go into the land of Canaan, He knows what they're up against. He knows what they're going to need, and He promises to be with them in the process. It says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." Dig down deep because you'll find Him there, He's saying. So maybe you need courage here this morning in life and faith. Maybe you're facing an opponent twice your size, facing a challenge where defeat seems certain, an assignment too difficult. Olympic athletes face these challenges all the time, and they meet them. Christians face them all the times, and we sometimes do. Let's get more specific, though. Sermons can oftentimes get lost in generalities. As I look around me, even in this congregation, I see people who don't just need courage, they need specific types of courage. Courage in the face of specific types of challenges. And that's what I want to spend the last few minutes talking about, specific types of courage for people of faith. I want to talk about the courage to fight. I want to talk about the courage to sacrifice. And I want to talk about the courage to try again, the courage to fight, the courage to sacrifice, and the courage to try again. Start this morning, starting with the first one, the courage to fight. The Apostle Paul writes to Timothy, "Fight the good fight of the faith." This is an athletic metaphor. It's a reference to Greco-Roman wrestling. Fight the good contest. Fight the good fight of the faith. He also says, "I have fought the good fight." Earlier, "I do not fight like a man beating the air." Paul was a fighter, a boxer, a wrestler. He knew faith was a battle against spiritual enemies, namely sin and the devil. Faith requires courage to fight. We're called to be fighters too, not fighters who fight any and everything. What type of fight does Paul tell us to fight? Fight the good fight. Fight for goodness. Fight for truth. Fight against evil. Fight against lust. Fight against sin. Don't fight anything. Fight the good fight. Christians are called to be fighters against opponents who seem much bigger than us. Sin, evil, the devil. Unfortunately, Christians that I know don't tend to be very good fighters. We don't like confrontation. We don't like conflict. We like peace and love. We're afraid of getting whooped by sin and the devil, so we just collapse to the carpet in our padded diaper or stay in the boat. But you can't be a person of faith without having the courage to fight. Maybe you know the story of Queen Underwood. Underwood is a female American boxer competing today in the Olympic debut of women's boxing. She came to boxing late in life, but it came as a much-needed outlet for her. You see, while a young girl, Queen and her older sister were repeatedly physically and sexually abused by their father. They were afraid of saying anything for many years out of fear of humiliation, punishment, abandonment. Eventually, the truth came out, and their father was sent to jail for 7 years. He actually could have been and should have been locked up longer. But Queen and her sister were reluctant to say anything in court. They're too afraid. Queen moved away, lived with her mother. She grew up, fell in with the wrong crowd, basically kept getting pushed around by life. Finally, frustrated with what her life had become, she decided to fight back, literally. She picked up boxing. She started fighting back against the evil, the pain that has happened to her. She's become quite the boxer. She's fighting this afternoon. She's not favored to win, but she's America's best hope for a medal. After years of getting pushed around in life by sin and evil, she decided to fight back. She decided to engage the enemy. Many of us don't. We let ourselves just get pushed around by sin, evil, by the world. We let evil have its way with us. We give into temptation. We give into lust. We give into anger. We give into laziness. We give into apathy. We never fight back. We're afraid of failing, afraid of looking foolish, so we never fight. But Christians have to be fighters. Fight the good fight, Paul says. Go to the mat. Nobody ever makes the medal stand by retreating to the corner. Christ did not die for our sins so we could get pushed around by the devil. Christ did not die for our sins so we could get pushed around by the devil. True? Christians need the courage to fight. Also, Christians need the courage to sacrifice. You cannot follow Jesus and not give up everything that is yours as God wants. Your time, your money, your skills, your affections, your very life. But that takes courage and trust that God will take care of you and bless you afterwards. Maybe you know the story of the talents. God gave talents to a man to see what he would do with them. As it turns out, he did nothing. He was afraid. He said he was afraid. I was afraid. I went out and hid your talent in the ground. Contrast this with the poor widow who came up to the treasury and gave away her 2 small coins. It was all she had, 2 small coins, but she put them in the offering. Jesus saw the act and commended her. I tell you the truth, this poor widow put in more than anyone else. All these people gave out of their wealth, but she gave out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Imagine the courage required to throw your only 2 coins into the temple treasury, trusting that God's going to take care of you. It reminds me of the flying squirrel. You know what the flying squirrel is? I still have not found out an explanation on why Gabby Douglas is called the flying squirrel. If you know, please explain to me afterwards. Gabby Douglas just won the all-around gymnastics gold in London. Gabby's from Virginia Beach. She's been doing gymnastics since she was a little girl. Everybody knew she was talented, even at like age 3, and that she had unbelievable potential, but she never seemed to reach it. 4 years ago, she was watching the Olympics in Beijing. And as a 12-year-old, she saw Ling Chao, the coach of Shawn Johnson. If you remember, Shawn won the silver in Beijing. Chao had such love and warmth as a coach that Douglas decided, while watching the television, she wanted to go train with him. So she told her mother, this 12-year-old told her mother, I want to go train with Chao. Her mother thought that was ridiculous. You don't watch the television and make those types of decisions. Chao coaches in Iowa, according to Natalie, her mother. Are there any people in Iowa? Gabby wouldn't let it go, though. This 12-year-old little girl wouldn't let it go. She reminded her mother that her mother had told her that realizing your goals takes sacrifice. You said that, Mom. Finally, Natalie, just to shut her up, drove her from Virginia Beach to Des Moines to meet the coach. Coach Chao instantly knew she had talent, but was reluctant to let a 16-year-old live in Iowa apart from her family, halfway across the country. But as Chao, the coach, said, she was sacrificing being with her mom in order to be the best gymnast she can be. That touched my heart. She had her ups and downs. While in Iowa, I'd say it worked out okay. It wasn't comfortable, though. In fact, as Gabby's mother was driving back from Iowa, she remembers thinking, what kind of mother does this? What kind of mother drops her child off in Iowa to live with strangers and train with strangers to get to the Olympics? I wonder the same thing when it comes to the sacrifices God asks Christians to make. Giving away loads of money and loads of time. Giving away our reputation and our success in our careers. What kind of mother does this? What kind of person does this? People who believe in something greater. That's why Michelle and I are giving $8,400 to the Capital Campaign to help us find a great new building and a great location for all of St. Louis, in addition to the 10% we give annually. That's our savings, that's our rainy day fund, that's our kids' college money. What kind of person does this? People who believe in something greater. That's why we started this church. We could have done many things after college. Starting a church was not one of them. But we saw the need, we heard the call, we decided to train in our dreams for a life of struggle, prayer, frustration, the difficulties, and the joys of pastoring. What kind of person does this? That's why so many of you have made so many sacrifices with your time and your money to make this church a reality, because you believe in something greater. What type of people do this? Christians do this, right? Christians do this. You and I do this. Followers of Christ do this. I'd say it's worked out okay. Sacrifice always does. Maybe God's calling you to make a greater sacrifice this morning of your time, of your money, of your gifts, of your resources. You'll never get gold if you bury your treasure. You'll never get gold if you stay in Virginia Beach. Christians are given the courage to fight, the courage to sacrifice, and lastly, we're given the courage to try again. I don't know about you, but my life oftentimes feels like one big string of failures. Whether it's in my marriage, my thought life, my leadership, what comes out of my mouth, just makes you want to give up. The other day, for example, if you can believe this, these papers. There. Took care of the paper problem. Just makes you want to give up. My constant string of failures. The other day, for example, I said something stupid, if you can believe this. I'm asking you to suspend disbelief. Can you believe that I said something stupid? Yes, I did. It happened. And I don't know if you can believe this, but I get really upset with myself when I say something stupid. I mean, it's infuriating. And at this moment, I decided to stop talking. I'm just done with talking. I have no idea how I'm going to preach or order food at a drive-thru. But if Im Dong-hyun can do archery without seeing, I'll find a way. I'm just done talking. It's hard to keep trying when you just keep failing. It's like a law in my life. When I try, I fail. In fact, the Bible actually calls it a law. It's a law of failure. Paul writes in Romans, I find this law at work. When I want to do good, evil is right there with me. What I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. What I do is not the good I want to do. No, the evil I do not want to do. This I keep on doing. That's a very confusing few sentences, but we all know exactly what he's saying. This is the law. You want to do good, you cannot. You don't want to do evil, but you do. So why even try? Why even try preaching when you're going to fail? Why even try loving when you're going to screw it up? Why even try to break an addiction when you're going to fall back off the wagon probably by the end of the day? Lolo Jones knows this. Maybe you know Lolo. Anybody know Lolo? The 100-meter hurdler for the U.S. She's also got a tear-jerking, I'm going to put on my Al Trout wig right now, tear-jerking backstory. She grew up in Iowa, but was not trained with a world-renowned coach. Her father was in and out of jail. Her mother struggled to provide for Lolo and her 4 siblings. They attended 8 schools in 8 years. They wound up living homeless in the basement of a Salvation Army church. Her dad taught Lolo how to steal television dinners from the grocery store to feed her brothers and sister. She overcame all that, though, became a world champion hurdler. When she arrived in Beijing in 2008, she was prepared to become America's greatest rags to riches story, with the endorsements and income she could provide for her family and leave all her poverty and struggles behind. Does anybody remember what happened at the 2008 Beijing Olympics? After about 80 meters into the finals of the 100-meter hurdles, her rags to riches story looked to take place, but then she clipped the 9th hurdle and placed 7th. She collapsed on the track, realized she had just made the worst stumble any athlete could ever make in the finals of an Olympic event in front of millions of people after having led the entire competition most of the way, walking away with nothing. She got off the track, though, immediately started planning her return. She was an older athlete, making a return difficult. Plus, at the height of her training last year, she developed a tethered spinal cord, which is a congenital neurological condition, left her unable to feel her feet. I'm not sure, Dennis is a track guy, do you have to be able to feel your feet running the hurdles? Yeah. What do you say? Yeah. I'm going to guess also, too. So she couldn't feel her feet, but she didn't even consider giving up. She went through all her rehab. She decorated her house with Olympic trinkets to hasten her recovery. She ate food off Olympic-styled plates so that she could focus on her goal. She recovered faster than anyone thought possible, winning several events along the way to make the London team. Jones is not expected to medal. She's too old, the competition too stiff. But do not tell her that if you run into her. She found the courage to try again. Following Christ requires the same. We're all going to trip. I love this verse. James writes, "We all stumble in many ways." That's fantastic. We all stumble in many ways. And even after we get up and start over, we're going to stumble again. But again, the courage God gives us in His Spirit is not the courage to win. We don't need to win. Jesus Christ won on our behalf and gives us the victory. There is no pressure to win. The courage God gives us in His Spirit is the courage to keep trying, the courage to learn, the courage to keep preaching, the courage to keep battling, the courage to keep talking, the courage to keep serving, the courage to keep giving, the courage to keep going to rehab, the courage to keep going to counseling, the courage to keep coming to church Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday until you get it. The courage to keep struggling no matter how many times we trip over the hurdle. Our assignment as Christians is not to win, is to be brave in the attempt, to be courageous. So maybe you need some courage this morning, courage to fight, courage to sacrifice, courage to try again. 6 hours away in London, athletes from around the world have found their courage, they've dug into their hearts and are competing in the games of their lives. You might not realize this, but you're in a competition even more important than theirs. But you have a resource in God's strength to do even better than they will. You have the courage of His Spirit inside of you. Let's pray that God goes and helps us find it. Let's pray.